Welcome, everybody, to the Ramana Maharshi International Satsang based here in San Diego, California. And let us welcome our special guest every month at this time from London, the internationally Ramana Maharshi scholar, Michael James. Michael, it's good to have you with us yet again.
Thank you.
Michael joins us on the first Sunday, as most of you know, of every month. And if you are seeing this on YouTube right now, you are welcome to join us live on these first Sundays. Just write to me. My name is Ted at newsguy55 at AOL.com. And I'll put you on our mailing list, which includes our Zoom link. It's always the same Zoom link every week of the year. And if you want to think about joining us on any other Sunday of the year, feel free to do so as we discuss Ramana's many wonderful teachings. So let's get started right now. Michael, if you're all set, strap in your seatbelts because it's going to be a long read on my part. We got our first question, and I'm just warning you so you don't think I'm reading a book or something. It's a very, very interesting, long first question from Jacques, and I think he's going to be joining us to ask a follow-up question. Michael, having listened to the first string of questions and your answers from the latest YouTube satsang on February 2nd at the San Diego Ramana Satsang, how to distinguish real awareness from awareness of phenomena, it occurs to me that we can never know if we are doing the practice properly or not. Let me explain. Having been through a number of paths throughout my 65 years, transcendental meditation, Kriya Yoga, Siddha Yoga, different schools and practices of Buddhism, so-called classical Vedanta, etc., I am painfully aware of all the hype that passes for Manonasa and when what is actually going on is Manolaya. But even on Bhagavan's path, before getting to the final stage of Manonasa, yes, awkwardly stated, since we cannot get to what we already are, it seems that we can never know if we are at least doing the practice correctly or not. That is, we cannot even know if we are attending to ourselves adequately, since what would know that we are correctly practicing self-attention other than ego. In other words, if we are in a state devoid of thoughts and thinking, Vasanas in the practice is often referred to, how could we even know? This is tricky because in other paths, like many paths of yoga, they say, you know this after one has gone through the entire process. But that's the rub. What they imply is that you remember that you are in a blank or thought-free state at the time. They can refer to either Savakapa or Nirvikalpa Samadhi, for example, after you come out of it. That is, however, absurd, Jacques says. How can you remember being in a state based on memory when memory was not present? Coming back to Atma-vichara, to put things more simply, and what I'm not aware that you have ever mentioned before, Michael, the only correct application of self-attention would be to take the final steps, so to speak, to complete surrender and to subside entirely. As you have stated many times, and according to my application of this practice, as soon as we attend to ourselves, Vishaya Vasanas start bubbling up and attempt to sway or lead us out of outer phenomena to any and all forms that can be distinguishable from anything else. But that keeps happening time and time again. And for all of us who have not gotten the whole way to complete subsidence, it is like Sadhu Om's analogy of trying to leap over an open well. We are only in the clear when our body makes it completely successfully across. Anything less, and we fall down to the bottom of the well. You will surely correct me, Michael, if I'm wrong, but you and others speak of the practice as if we can do it with a certain degree of success to go deep, for example. But in light of what I have mentioned above, what does that mean exactly? Yes, I know you cannot put that into words, but if you get what I have been alluding to, there is something that is not adding up. And he ends his question by saying, Nespa, is it not? Michael? Over to you.
Okay. The first thing that needs to clarify, when Jacques says, if we are in a state devoid of thoughts and thinking, within brackets vasana, as the practice is often referred to, how could we even know? This is a fundamental misunderstanding that many people have about the practice of self-investigation, but it's a matter of being without thoughts. Being without thoughts is not the aim of Atma-vichara, self-investigation. It is the aim of yoga. As Patanjali says in the second sutra of his Yoga Sutra, he defines what yoga is. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is restraining or stopping mental activity, chitta vritti. That is not the aim in Atma-vichara. It is a byproduct of Atma-vichara, but it is not the aim of Atma-vichara. It is very, very important to understand this, because if we are simply trying to achieve a state without thoughts, the most we can achieve is manolaya. That is a temporary dissolution of mind. But achieving temporary dissolution of mind, even if it may be called by names such as Kevala Nivikalpa Samadhi or any other type of samadhi, it is only temporary. There is no spiritual benefit in being in a state of manolaya. Every day when we fall asleep, we go into manolaya. All thoughts cease. We're in a state devoid of thoughts. But do we make any spiritual progress when we're in sleep? No. So merely being free of thoughts is not our aim. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he gets around this by saying that sleep is also a chitta vritti, a modification of the mind or a mental activity, which is obviously absurd. Sleep is a state devoid of mind, so we cannot call sleep a chitta vritti. What is our aim when we are practicing Atma-vichara? Our aim is very simple: to know who am I, to know what we actually are. That is our aim in Atma-vichara. We have to keep this aim in mind, because if we begin to think but our aim is merely to be free of thoughts, devoid of thoughts, we'll be going off on a tangent. That is, when we are practicing self-investigation, we should not be concerned about thoughts. As Bhagavan says in the 6th paragraph of Nana, however many thoughts arise, so what? As and when each thought arises, it's necessary to vigilantly investigate to whom it rises. Investigating to whom it rises or to whom it appears means turning our attention away from thoughts back towards ourself. If we turn our attention back towards ourself, and if we hold on to that self-attentiveness, the mind will subside back into its source, and the thought that had risen will also subside, as Bhagavan says. And then he goes on to say, if we practice and practice in this manner, if we persist in practicing in this manner, that means if we persist in trying to turn our attention back towards ourselves, whenever it gets diverted away towards the appearance of any thought, any phenomenon, but thereby the mind will gain the strength to remain in its source. So if we are concerned about thoughts, whether thoughts are subsiding or not, our attention is on the thoughts, not on ourselves. If we attend to ourselves, we won't even notice whether thoughts are there or not, because we're not attending to them. Thoughts are not a problem. The problem is our attending to thoughts. So in order to avoid attending to thoughts, we need to attend just to ourselves. And it's important here to understand what is meant by thoughts. When Bhagavan talks about thoughts, he's not just talking about mental chatter. Anything that we experience, anything that we do not experience in sleep is a thought. So whatever appears and disappears, whatever appears and disappears in waking dream, but does not appear in sleep, is a thought. What remains in sleep is only pure awareness. For pure awareness, I am, awareness of our own being. In sleep, there is nothing other than awareness of our being. That alone is not a thought. Everything else is a thought. So let any number of thoughts appear. To whom do they appear? To me. And when Bhagavan says it's necessary to investigate to whom, he means it's necessary to turn our attention away from whatever thoughts appear or whatever phenomena appear, because all phenomena are just thoughts. It's necessary to turn our attention away from those. How do we do so? By turning it back towards ourselves, the one to whom all these thoughts appear. So that is the sole aim in Atma-vichara, is trying to fix our attention on ourselves. And inevitably, under the sway of vasanas, our attention will get drawn outwards again. But whenever our attention is drawn outwards, when our attention is drawn outwards, we become aware of the appearance of thoughts or phenomena. So to whom do they appear? To me, we turn our attention back to ourselves. It's not, many people just think it's a questioning process. To whom is this thought? To me, who am I? It's not a questioning process. Bhagavan doesn't say question to whom or question who am I. He says investigate. That means we need to, whatever appears should remind us to turn our attention back to ourselves. If our aim is just to attend to ourselves, we will not be concerned whether thoughts appear or not, because we're not attending to them. So, but if we take trying to achieve a state devoid of thoughts as the aim, as I say, we will end up in manolaya. That is what happens in the path of yoga. They end up in the highest state in yoga is the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, kevala nirvikalpa samadhi, which, as Bhagavan clarified, is just a state of manolaya. It's a temporary dissolution of mind. So that's the first thing to understand. Our aim is just to attend to ourselves. And attending to ourselves is not an all or nothing process. That is, when we start off on this practice, we obviously are not able to attend to ourselves exclusively. We are not able to focus our entire attention on ourselves. So our aim is to attend to ourselves as much as possible. The more we attend to ourselves, the more our attention is thereby withdrawn from other things. That is what is meant by going deep in this practice. That is, that we go deep to the extent to which our attention is focused on ourselves. Of course, words or images are inadequate to describe this process, but just to give us a rough idea, Sadhu Om often used to say, it's like trying to turn 180 degrees. That is, now our attention is facing outwards. Outwards means away from ourselves towards other things. Our aim is to turn our attention back 180 degrees, so to speak. That means to turn our attention back towards ourselves and thereby away from all other things. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent our attention is withdrawn from other things. So during practice, so to speak, we may be turning our attention 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 50 degrees, 90, 100, 120. All that is still the practice. The manonasa is achieved only when our attention is turned 180 degrees. Turning 180 degrees means we attend only to ourselves. We attend to ourselves so keenly and exclusively but our attention is thereby completely withdrawn from everything else. When we attend only to ourselves, we will be aware of nothing other than ourselves because our attention is withdrawn from everything else. It's focused only on ourselves. When we're aware of nothing other than ourselves, that is the state of pure awareness. So when the mind or ego, the attention, gets turned 180 degrees back towards itself, that means towards its own reality, we as ego thereby experience ourselves as pure awareness. But as soon as we as ego experience ourselves as ego, pure awareness, we cease to be ego and remain as pure awareness, because ego is the adjunct conflated awareness. That is, there is only one awareness. That awareness is I. When that awareness is conflated with adjuncts as I am this body, I am this person, that conflated awareness is what is called ego. So ego is an impure awareness, an adjunct conflated awareness. But when, to the extent to which our attention is turned back towards ourself, the adjuncts drop off because we're no longer holding on to them. And eventually when we turn the full 180 degrees, so to speak, we thereby are aware of ourselves. We're aware of nothing other than ourselves. Thus, we're aware of ourselves as pure awareness, because pure awareness means awareness that is aware of nothing other than itself. That is what we actually are. So as soon as we experience ourselves as pure awareness, this impure awareness called ego, the awareness I am this body, that gets annihilated, completely eradicated, and we remain forever as pure awareness. So the main point of this question is how we can know whether we're doing this correctly. We shouldn't complicate this. This is extremely simple. If we understand correctly what Atma-vichara is, it is simply fixing our attention on ourself. Bhagavan defines what he means by the term Atma-vichara in the 16th paragraph of Nana. In Tamil, he says, Sada kalamum manate atma-vil-vaitiruptikutan Atma-vichara mendrupaya. The literal meaning of that is, the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. Keeping the mind on oneself means keeping the attention on ourselves. So to the extent to which we're attending to ourselves, to our mere being, to that extent we are practicing Atma-vichara. So it only takes a moment of perfect self-attentiveness. In other words, attending to nothing other than ourselves, to attending to ourselves alone. In other words, turning 180 degrees. It only takes one moment to destroy ego. So during the practice, we are trying more and more to attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, as Bhagavan says, by practicing and practicing in this manner, that's it, by practicing and practicing, turning our attention back to ourselves, whenever it gets diverted away towards anything else, we gain thereby we gain the strength, the power to remain subsided as we are, to remain subsided in our source. So to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent do we as ego subside. And to the extent to which we as ego subside, everything else will subside along with us. So we need not worry about thoughts, because if we subside, the thoughts will subside. So our only concern should be attending to ourselves. One other thing that requires clarification. Oh, okay, here's one point. He says, we cannot even know if we're attending to ourselves adequately, since what would know that we are correctly practicing self-attention other than ego? That is, we are not yet attending to ourselves adequately. If we attend to ourselves adequately, that means if we attend to ourselves 100%, if we turn a full 180 degrees, then ego will be annihilated. So our self-attentiveness is not, well, by adequately, if we mean perfectly, we are not attending to ourselves perfectly, but we are moving in that direction by trying to attend to ourselves more and more, our power of attention gets refined more and more, and we are able to focus more and more on our mere being. We can know very clearly if we're attending to ourselves, there will be no doubt about whether we're attending to ourselves or not. Attending to ourselves means attending to that which is attending not to anything that appears and disappears, but that which alone is permanent, namely our own being, that which exists and shines not only in waking and dream, but also in sleep. So our mere being, this fundamental awareness I am, that is what we are attending to. So we may not be attending to it perfectly, but at least we're attending to it to some extent. And when he says, what would know that we're correctly practicing self-attention other than ego? Yes, of course, it's ego alone. This practice of self-investigation, self-attention, is only for ego. What we actually are, the pure being awareness, such it that we actually are, doesn't need to practice self-attention because it is always aware of itself just by being itself. But as ego, we are aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So as ego, we need to attend to ourselves in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it is ego that is doing the practice. And of course, it's ego that is aware that it is attending to itself, at least to some extent. It's not when ego attends to itself perfectly, when it attends 100% to itself, then it ceases to be ego and remains as pure awareness. So, but until then, during the practice is done by ego, and it's ego that it's only ego that can know that I'm doing this, if not perfectly, at least to some extent. And we are moving in the right direction, so to speak. We are looking in the right direction. That's better than saying moving in the right direction, because it's not a movement. We are looking in the right direction when we look towards ourselves, when we turn our attention towards ourselves. We're not. If we don't experience ourselves as we actually are, as pure infinite being awareness, we haven't yet looked at ourselves carefully enough. So we need to try looking more and more. Of course, when we say looking, we're using the word looking metaphorically. Looking means attending. We try to attend to ourselves more and more until we become clearly aware of ourselves as we actually are. What we actually are is pure satchit, pure being awareness that is aware of nothing other than itself. So we are moving in the right direction, and we can clearly see that we're moving in the right direction, even though we haven't yet attended to ourselves perfectly. We are at least getting close to that by this practice of self-attentiveness. So we can if we are doing this practice, if we are practicing correctly, we will have no doubt about whether we're practicing correctly or not. That is, people often write to me. Just recently, someone wrote to me saying he's not sure whether he's practicing correctly. And again, the same thing he said about being free of thoughts. Our aim is not to be free of thoughts. Whether thoughts appear or disappear, we are always aware I am. So our only aim is to attend to I am. That is, thoughts arise only because we attend to them. So in order to put an end to the rising of thoughts, we need to cease attending to them. But if we merely try to stop attending to thoughts, well, it's almost impossible, because the effort not to attend to thoughts is itself a thought. So in yoga, they have a simple trick, in order to stop thinking. That is pranayama. Because to the extent to which we subdue the breath, we thereby subdue the mental activity, because the mind, the activity of the mind and the breathing are very closely connected. So if you stop breathing, you will thereby stop the mental activity. If you stop the mental activity, you'll thereby stop the breathing. There's this connection between them. So that is a trick to bring about cessation of thought, chitta vritti nirodha. But as Bhagavan said, pranayama is only an aid to restrain the mind. That means to restrain to subdue the mental activity, but it will not bring about manonasa. That's what Bhagavan says at the end of the 8th paragraph of Nana. In order to, manonasa can be achieved only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are. Being aware of ourselves as we actually are means we, in sleep, for example, sleep is a state of manolaya. In sleep, we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, because there's nothing other than what we actually are. But why ego is not destroyed when we fall asleep? Because ego, in sleep, we subside because of tiredness. Once ego has subsided, what remains is the pure awareness I am. But ego is not thereby destroyed by the pure awareness I am, because ego has subsided. So ego doesn't experience itself as pure awareness I am. That's why when ego rises again in waking and dream, sleep seems to be a state of darkness. It's not clear to us what sleep was. I mean, the reason for that is because we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are now. So we cannot be aware of ourselves as we were in sleep, because what we were in sleep was just being as we actually are. So in Atma-vichara, we as ego are trying to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So because it's we as ego trying to turn our attention back to ourselves, when we manage to turn our attention back to ourselves, we as ego experience ourselves as we actually are. But as soon as we experience ourselves as we actually are, we thereby cease to be ego and remain eternally as we actually are. So in the case of sleep or any state of manolaya, ego subsides and then pure awareness remains. In the case of Atma-vichara, by turning our attention back to ourselves, we as ego experience ourselves with pure awareness, and thereby ego is destroyed. So the experience of pure awareness must come before the subsidence of ego. That is, the experience of pure awareness must bring about the subsidence of ego. Then only is ego destroyed. So that's the difference between manolaya and manonasa. If the mind dissolves by any means other than self-attentiveness, it will result in manolaya. But if the mind dissolves as a result of self-attentiveness, that is manonasa. That is the difference between the two. So we need to be, this is such a prevalent misunderstanding that Atma-vichara is trying to stop thinking. That Bhagavan has never said we should try to stop thinking. He says, however many thoughts arise, investigate to whom they arise. So in other words, we need to turn our attention back to ourselves. We're not trying to stop thoughts. We are trying to know, who am I? When we know who am I, ego will thereby be annihilated. And since ego is the root of all, ego is the first thought and root of all other thoughts, all thoughts will be annihilated when ego is annihilated. Regarding the question, how can you remember being in a state based on memory when memory was not present? This requires some clarification. When we wake up from sleep, we remember having been in a state in which we were not aware of anything. The fact that we are aware of having been in a state in which we were not aware of anything means we were aware of being in that state. Obviously, when we're asleep, we are not thinking, I'm not aware of anything. We are just aware, I am, nothing other than I am. So we're not aware of any phenomena in sleep. Memory, in the usual sense of the term, is a residue of past impressions. So in the waking and dream states, we have so many experiences. Those experiences are all mental impressions. Some of those mental impressions leave a residue, which is what we call memory. So in the normal sense of the term, yes, we are not, we can't say we remember being in sleep. But it's a different type of memory. The memory by which we are aware, I have been asleep, I was asleep. That is not the memory in the usual sense of the term. That is, it is how we remember having been in a state in which we were not aware of anything. Not aware of anything means not aware of anything other than ourselves. How we remember that is a continuity of our self-awareness. We are always aware I am. That awareness I am, it's like as Bhagavan often used to say, it's like the screen in a cinema. Whether pictures are projected on the screen or not, the screen is always present. Likewise, this fundamental awareness I am is ever present. In waking and dream, pictures are projected on it, so we're aware of so many things. In sleep, it's the state in which no pictures are projected. But the awareness I am continues. The awareness I am is it's not the awareness I was or the awareness I will be. It's the ever-present awareness I am. That is, I am is the eternal present. So it is ever present. This awareness I am, because it's the fundamental reality. It is the ground on which all other things appear. It's the screen on which all other things appear. It is ever present. So we are aware of this continuity of our existence in sleep, of our existence and our awareness in sleep. We're aware of that continuity. And so we say, I remember I was in sleep. That means I was aware of being in a state in which I wasn't aware of anything. So because we don't have any better word for it, we call it memory. We can say, yes, I remember having been asleep. But we clearly know when we wake up from sleep, we clearly know that we have just come out of a state in which we were not aware of anything. So we were clearly aware of being in that state. So that continuity of self-awareness is what we call the memory of sleep. So it's not memory in the usual sense of the mental impression, the residual mental impressions. It's the ever-present awareness of our own being. Oh yes, there's another thing here. Jacques says, as soon as we attend to ourselves, Vishaya Vasanas start bubbling up. No. Vishaya Vasanas start bubbling up as soon as we wake up from sleep. That is, as soon as ego rises, all its Vasanas arise with it. Throughout the waking and dream state, Vishaya Vasanas are bubbling up. Everything that we experience in waking and dream is nothing but a play of our Vasanas. Vishayas means objects or phenomena. Vasanas means the inclinations. So the Vishaya Vasanas are the seeds that give rise to all Vishayas. So this whole world, everything that we experience other than I, is nothing but a projection of our Vishaya Vasanas. So all mental activity is nothing but a play of Vishaya Vasanas. We may not notice it because our attention is going outwards. So many people are not aware of that all this is going on is just a play of our own vasanas. When we begin to attend to ourselves, and we keep on finding that our attention is being drawn away from ourselves towards other things, then only we begin to recognize the activity of Vishaya Vasanas. The Vishaya Vasanas are our own inclinations, our own liking to be aware of things other than ourselves. So yes, as soon as we attend to ourselves, the obstacle to our attending to ourself is our liking to attend to other things, which is what Visheya Vasanas essentially are just that. They're the inclination or liking to attend to things other than ourselves. They are, because we've been cultivating these Visheya Vasanas since time immemorial, as Bhagavan says at the beginning of the 10th paragraph of Nana, Tondru Totu Varakindra Vishaya Vasana. That means Vishaya Vasanas which come from, I can't exactly translate Tondru Totu, but it means more or less something like from time immemorial, from the very beginning of time, or that is, ego. The Vishaya Vasanas are not ego, but it is the nature of ego to have Vishaya Vasanas. Because as Bhagavan explains in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, ego has no separate existence. It's a formless demon, as he calls it. It's formless because it's got no separate existence. It acquires a separate existence as ego only when it rises and grasps form. The forms don't exist independent of ego. So as soon as we rise as ego, the implication is, as soon as we rise as ego, we project forms and grasp them. The first form we grasp is this body consisting of 5 sheaths, which we identify as I. So Bhagavan says, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. That is, ego cannot rise or stand for a moment without constantly identifying itself with a body. A body means not just the physical form of the body, but all the 5 sheaths. The body, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will. These 5 are called the 5 sheaths, and they make up the body that we experience as ourself. And then he goes on to say, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. That is, having grasped the form of a body as I, we are then constantly attending to other forms. The forms are all Vishayas, they're all objects or phenomena. And that is the food on which ego lives. And then he says, leaving form, it grasps form, because ego cannot stand for a moment without constantly grasping form. So since ego depends for its seeming existence upon its grasping the appearance of things other than itself. That is, those things other than itself have no existence independent of ego. But as soon as we rise the ego, we project all these forms and we are constantly grasping them. That means we're constantly attending to them. So since ego cannot rise, stand, or flourish without constantly attending to forms, without constantly grasping forms, which are all Vishayas. Vishayas is just another word that means the same as form. It is the very nature of ego to have Vishaya Vasanas. So when we try to attend to ourselves, we are going against the very nature of ego. So the ego's nature is has strong inclinations to constantly attend to other things because its very survival depends upon that. So when we try to attend to ourselves, the vasanas will be numerous vasanas. Bhagavan said the vasanas, they rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. Throughout the waking and dream state, Vishaya vasanas are rising and projecting all these phenomena, or being projected as these phenomena. So when we try to attend to ourselves, there's a lot of resistance. We don't want to let go. Because in order to hold on to ourselves, we need to let go of everything else. So these vasanas will be, the inclination to attend to things other than ourselves will be experienced very strongly the more we attend to ourselves. But so often our attention will be diverted away from ourselves towards other things. But however many times the attention is diverted away towards other things, we need to turn it back to ourselves and hold on to self-attentiveness. So I hope I've adequately answered this. Oh, regarding the analogy that Sadhu Om talked about leaping over a well, the context in which Sadhu Om used that is when people say this person is he's got a high degree of realization, or he's very close to realization. Um, so Sadhu Om said that's like saying someone has jumped 99% across the well. If you jump 99% across the well, what will happen? You'll fall in the well. So what is called realization, which is actually nothing but annihilation of the ego, it's an all or nothing process. It's an all or nothing thing. So either we know ourselves as we actually are, or we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. When we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are, that is ego. So there's no such thing as partial realization. That's why Sadhu Om used it. So yes, during practice, we have not yet jumped over the well. So we need to continue the practice until we're able to jump over the well. That's how we can apply that analogy here. Jumping over the well means turning our attention 180 degrees back towards ourselves. In other words, being 100% self-attentive. As soon as we're 100% self-attentive, ego is thereby destroyed. So Jacques, are you here now? And was this answer clear?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you went far above and beyond in your explanations, which having followed you for a number of years, I think I fairly well understand. My doubt is not about the process of me doing it well or not. It's rather that I still have this underlying impression that people think self-attentiveness is going on without thoughts still being there. In other words, that's exactly like you said at the end with Sadhu Om's analogy. Thoughts are always there, and unless you hit the final goal of mananasa.
Yes.
That was my entire, really, my main point.
But did you understand the point about the aim of Atma-vichara, the aim of self-investigation, is not being free of thoughts? That is a byproduct.
Sure. Yeah,
when ego is destroyed, all thoughts will be destroyed. But if we take being free of thoughts as the aim, we're going in the wrong direction. We're concerned about, we should not be concerned about thoughts. Let them appear or disappear. It's no concern of ours. At the end of verse 6 of Arunachya Ashtakam, that is what Bhagavan says in verse 6 of Arunachya Ashtakam. He starts by saying there is one substance, one reality, one real substance. You, addressing Arunachya, you, the light of awareness. That is the only thing that actually exists. But in that, and not other than that, there is a wonderful power, an extraordinary power. That's the power of Maya, which is mind. And from that, all these thoughts proceed. And he describes how the whole world is a mental projection. But he ends that verse saying, Nindrida sendrida ninevida vindre. That means let them go on or let them stop. They are not other than you. There he's giving us a clue. We should not concern ourselves about the appearance or disappearance of thoughts. In some book it's recorded that when someone asked Bhagavan about how we can know whether we're making progress, and Bhagavan said you can measure your progress by the freedom of thoughts. I think that is a misrecording. Bhagavan never said that. Bhagavan said, do not be concerned about thoughts. Thoughts are not our concern. Our concern is knowing who am I. If we're concerned about thoughts, then we're looking in the wrong direction. Thoughts
Yes.
are something other than ourselves. If we're concerned about whether they appear or not, we are looking away from ourselves. If we look back to ourselves, we won't even notice whether thoughts are there or not.
Yes, because thoughts are just like any other phenomenon.
Well, so when ego rises, it's the nature of ego to project thoughts. But
Yes.
to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, ego will thereby subside and everything else will subside along with it. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunapadu, he says very beautifully, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Everything there means all thoughts, all phenomena. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. That is, all these thoughts, all this whole universe is nothing but an expansion of ego. I mean, it's all, where did this universe appear? It all appears in our mind. It's nothing but our own thoughts. So it's just modifications of that ego experiences within itself. So these things have no existence independent of ego. And then he concludes that verse by saying, therefore, know that investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what ego is. If we investigate ego, as he made clear in the previous verse, to the extent to which we attend to ego, ego will thereby subside. When ego subsides, everything will subside. So this self-investigation is the ultimate, this is self-surrender. We're giving up ourselves, we are giving up everything. So this is the true renunciation is not external changes in our external life. True renunciation is turning our attention within and subsiding back in, thereby subsiding back into the heart. That is giving up everything.
Indeed. Do I have time? I don't want to hog up all the time.
No, by all means, please. It's a very important topic.
Indeed. I was just wondering if I could ask another question, which isn't entirely related, but which, through many years of looking into these questions, I've never found an answer to.
Yes.
And it's simply the question, why? Yes, I understand Bhagavan's answer. By why, I mean, why the suffering? Why what can be called the Leela? Why, you know, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in God, my mind's off.
Yeah, so many things are happening, and so many terrible things.
All the suffering.
And they have been happening from time immemorial.
Yes, indeed. So the question is, yes, I understand the explanations. It's looked and see that it's, as Bhagavan says, look and see that it's not even happening at all, because it's Maya, or analogies like the son of a barren woman. Is there, with your extensive knowledge of the scriptures, is there anywhere that there is some sort of other explanation that they give?
Okay. I don't have extensive knowledge of scriptures, but I have Bhagavan's works have come to only about 300 verses or so, his original writings, plus the 20 paragraphs of Nana and a few other small pieces of writing. So we don't need to be a genius or to study a lot to master Bhagavan's works. If we read Bhagavan's work, the answers are there in whatever questions we may ask, the answers are there in Bhagavan's teachings. In the first paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan explains that our real nature is infinite happiness. He says, since all jivas, all sentient beings, like to be always happy without misery, since for everyone there's the greatest love for oneself, and since happiness alone is the cause of love, in order to experience that happiness, which is one's own nature, one's own real nature, which one experiences daily in sleep, oneself knowing oneself is necessary. Okay, he doesn't answer your question explicitly here, but implicitly your question is answered here, because what he implies there is that our real nature is infinite happiness. But when we rise as ego, we limit ourselves at the extent of this body. So when we limit ourselves as the extent of this body, we're limiting ourselves in space. I am here, not there. We limit ourselves in time. I was born so many years in the past, and a few years in the future, or a few minutes in the future, whenever, whatever it is, we don't know when death is coming, maybe the next moment. At some point in the future, I'm going to come to an end. Because we've limited ourselves in space, we've limited ourselves in time, and the other limitation that is called vastu, that is, we limit ourselves, I am this thing, not that thing. So we separate ourselves from all other things, so to speak. So by rising as ego, we impose limitations upon ourselves. Our real nature is infinite happiness, but as a finite ego, or an ego that identifies with finite things, we cannot experience the infinite happiness that is our own real nature. So the very nature of ego is to be dissatisfied. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said it very nicely. He said the fact that all jivas are always dissatisfied is itself proof that our real nature is Brahman. Our real nature is infinite happiness. So nothing short of infinite happiness can satisfy us. So this is why samsara, in the usual sense of the term, samsara means embodied existence. Embodied existence is misery. Bhagavan says that samsara is nothing but ego. In verse 24 of Uludunapadu, he says this ego, another name for ego is samsara. Because ego is, embodied existence is nothing but ego existence. It's ego that experiences itself as I am this body. So this is, being embodied is inherently a dissatisfying state, because we cannot experience the infinite happiness that we actually are so long as we rise as ego. So since we're not experiencing infinite happiness, we are experiencing a mixture of pleasure and pain. That is the one infinite happiness that we actually are is split into two opposites, so to speak, happiness and unhappiness. Just like our being is split into existence and non-existence. Now I exist, now I'm alive. Before I was born, I didn't exist. After I die, I won't exist. So our being, which is infinite and eternal, I mean, infinite includes eternal, is limited in time. So it's the opposite of it. There's the being and the non-being, the existence and the non-existent, the life and death. Our awareness is limited. We know some things, we don't know other things. In the same way, the happiness is also limited. We sometimes experience a little bit, some iotas of happiness. Sometimes we experience the opposite. We experience the dissatisfaction becomes more intense. So it is all due to the fact that we have risen as ego and limited ourselves, all the miseries. So why have we risen as ego? Then the only answer is, look at yourself and see whether you've ever risen as ego. We seem to have risen as ego. We seem to be experiencing all this misery and or this mixture of happiness and unhappiness, pleasure and pain. We seem to be experiencing all these things because we've never looked at ourselves closely enough. If we look at ourselves closely enough, we will see that what we actually are is infinite. As Bhagavan says in verse 28 of Upadesha, if one knows what the nature of oneself is, then Anadi, Ananta, Akanda, Satchidananda. Anadi means beginningless, because it's beyond time. Ananta means endless, but it also means without limit, so infinite. And Akhanda means it's unbroken, undivided. So we are one infinite, undivided Satchidananda. That's what we actually are. But we seem to be this finite ego with all this experiencing a mixture of pleasure and pain because of our rising as ego. So the whole problem is our rising as ego. The solution is, as ego, we're always looking outwards, away from ourselves. So the solution is to look at ourselves, and the whole problem is solved. And then the question of why no longer arises.
Okay, Jack?
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Nothing will satisfy us. No answer will satisfy us. Satisfaction lies only in knowing what we actually are.
But why that process is my question. For example, really, I'll keep it at this and I'll leave it go.
Yeah.
Why, for example, and it's not because I agree with the Christians, but they'll come up, for example, with original sin. In other words, because we sort of like did something wrong originally, we're going through this. So why the arising of us in this limited body? That's the question.
According to Bhagavan, original sin is nothing but ego. Our rising as ego, well, who has risen as ego? I have risen as ego. So let's investigate ourselves and find out. The only way, no answers may or may not satisfy the intellect, but no answer is there, no conceptual answer will truly satisfy us. True satisfaction can be found only by knowing ourselves as we actually are. Otherwise, if we're looking for answers anywhere other than in ourselves, we're looking in the wrong direction. If we look for the answers within ourselves, by attending to ourselves, all the questions will dissolve.
Thank you very much.
The questioner will dissolve, and so its questions and doubts will all dissolve along with it.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
That is why this is Vedanta. Vedanta means the end of all knowledge. This is the end of all philosophy, all science, all religion. It all ends when ego subsides.
Thank you, Jacques.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Good questions.
Oh, it's an excellent question, and every part of your answer is excellent too. I have a question, real quick question, but before I say that, on this very subject, you might laugh at it, but I found it very helpful. A friend of mine who lives up the street, he's retired, he's a psychiatrist. He's also a leading individual here in San Diego on the teachings of Vedanta. He knows it, in my opinion, very well. But as a psychiatrist, he says, you got to remember, Ted, when you're born into this world, it's like original sin, you expect happiness. And happiness in reality is that brief interval in between two periods of pain. That's how you go through life. That's until you learn to look inward. I don't know if that
exactly. Like whatever little pleasures we get in this life, they're so insignificant, and the price we have to pay for these little pleasures, I mean, life is a mixture of pleasure and pain, of happiness and unhappiness. So long as we rise as ego. So the only solution is to cease rising as ego. And the only way to cease rising as ego is to turn within. If we instead of turning within, if we try to stop thoughts, yes, we'll subside in Manolaya, but that's only temporary. If we want a permanent solution, we need to attend to ourselves. That is the only way, because only by knowing ourselves as we actually are, will we free ourselves from this, from samsara, from this endless cycle of birth and death.
Yeah, and like 1 in a million people, I feel like the luckiest guy alive because I happened to trip up across this path of Ramana where it's so seriously looked at.
Yeah.
Before we get to Melissa's question, a real quick question about something you said 10 minutes ago. You said ignore our thoughts. You've said that many times before. You repeat what Ramana's thinking is on that. My question is, when we replace our thoughts or attempt to replace our thoughts with stillness, let's say silence, we may get pretty close to it. Uh, doesn't the stillness benefit our practice of Atma-vichara?
Are you not there whether thoughts are there or stillness is there?
Right, but doesn't the relative absence of thoughts benefit that practice of Atma-vichara?
Not necessarily. Why relative absence of thought? There's absolute absence of thoughts in sleep. Does that help
Yeah.
us?
Well, no, because I don't seem to have control over my
Yes.
presence in sleep.
That is, all we need to do is attend to ourselves.
Yes.
We are
That's
aware
true.
of ourselves, whether we're in a peaceful state or an agitated state, whether thoughts are there or thoughts and whether there are more thoughts or less thoughts, whether there's peace or no peace. But all these things, when you talk about peace, you're talking about a temporary state of peace.
Yes.
We want the eternal peace, which is our own real nature. So for that, we need to look at that which is permanent. We are not looking for anything temporary. We are looking for that which is permanent. And what is permanent? We alone are permanent. So we need to hold on to ourselves.
Absolutely. I think I probably should have said, in my estimation, it feels like going into relative stillness or silence sort of sets the stage for self-inquiry.
Well, to a certain extent, if our mind is much agitated, that's not a very it's. But we need to be careful with this because yes, of course, when we're in a quiet state of mind, it is arguably, in a certain sense, it's more conducive to turning our attention back to ourselves. But that doesn't mean we can't turn our attention back to ourselves, even in an agitated state of mind. In an agitated state of mind, we've maybe got more motivation. When everything is calm and peaceful, we can be lulled into a type of the word slips my mind. A type of false contentment.
Yes.
But so the thing is, life is throwing all sorts of troubles at us. When the external world is not throwing troubles at us, troubles are arising from within. So there's no peace to be found in the state of ego. The only solution is the dissolution of ego, the subsidence of ego. And the only way to make ego subside in such a way that it will never rise again is self-attentiveness.
Yeah, thank you. The predicate for my question was only because I tend to be have a rajasic being of always something distracting me every second, and working towards calming that down seems to help.
Yeah. Well, the mind is a mixture of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Maybe in different proportion. Maybe some of us are more rajasic by nature, some are more tamasic by nature, some are more sattvic by nature, but it's all relative. But whether the mind's in a sattvic state, rajasic state, or tamasic state, we are always aware I am. So let's not worry about this rajas, tamas. Of course, when you're in a sattvic state, yes, okay, it's easier. It's more conducive to self-attentiveness. But we shouldn't think that we can't attend to ourselves in the midst of activity or in the midst of dullness.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Melissa has a question. Melissa, take it away.
This is not a question. I'm just offering my own refuge to the previous question about why does all of this appearance appear? And my sense of it is that the infinite Sat Chit has infinite freedom to project itself in infinite manifestation. So, but our task then is to cease identifying with the projections, with the so-called body, mind, and world, and turn our attention to identify entirely with the projector, the Sat-Chit itself, ourself. And therein lies therein is the liberation from the body, mind, and world, because we have found the infinite peace of what is the true reality.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, in general, what you say is correct. That is, the peace is to be found only within ourselves. However, what has projected all this is not Sat-Chit. Sat-Chit is just pure being. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't project anything. It's only as ego that we have projected all these things. But the reality of ego is that Sat-Chit. So as ego, we have projected all this. We've got ourselves in a big mess. The only way out of this mess that we've created for ourselves is to return to our own source, our own reality, our own being, Sat-Chit.
Yes, yes. I didn't call it the ego, but that's the, you might say, the intermediary, or
It is the
from which.
Bhagavan
Yes.
calls it the intermediary.
Oh, yes, it does. Of course, that makes sense, because that's where the projection occurs. But I'd have to say that the infinite Sat-Chit, you might say, allows or gives permission or emanates the ego that then does the projection.
Rather than saying it allows, it is the ground of possibility.
Yes.
But it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It just is as it is. It's only as ego that we misuse this, our power of Sat-Chit, to project all this.
Interesting. Yes, thank you. Yes, it's the ground of possibility. And given that ground of possibility, we also have the possibility to turn back to being what we really are.
Because
yes,
you said about freedom, our real nature is infinite freedom.
Yes.
So when we rise as ego, our being is limited, our awareness is limited, our happiness is limited, and our freedom is limited.
Yes.
But we as ego, we always have that freedom, though it may be limited because of our rising as ego. The freedom is always there, so we always have the freedom to turn back within.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
Francis has got his hand up. Francis, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Michael. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to thank you for everything over the years, and just that's it. Thank you so much. I mean that most sincerely. You just continue to point to the same ultimate eternal truth, and I can only tell you how much I love you, and that's it.
Yeah, but it's not me, it's Bhagavan's grace. Bhagavan's grace has somehow given me the love. That is, his teachings are so simple. If we are caught in the web of his grace, we will just fall in love with the simplicity of his teachings. And in that simplicity lies their beauty and their power. And his teachings contain answers to everything. And not only answer to everything, it contains the solution to everything. That solution is turning our attention back within, to the reality, to what we actually are.
I'll add to what Francis said. It's the clarity that you bring to Ramana's teachings as well. You say they're clear.
That clarity, Bhagavan is clarity itself.
I know. Okay, should we go on to the next question?
It's not me bringing clarity. Somehow that clarity is
Oh, give
even through
Ramana
this very imperfect instrument, that clarity is shining.
give Ramana's words to a prominent politician from around the world, and they may mangle the words. They may
Oh yeah,
mangle.
yeah, the mind can mangle anything.
Should we go
Give
to?
Bhagavan's teachings even to most brilliant philosopher or scientist. They won't understand it because their minds are too complicated, too many thoughts.
Jacques, if you can make it quick, Jacques, because we have to get to another.
Yes. Okay, yeah, it's a real quick question and actually a pretty, well, maybe not such important one, but since you were on the question of the gunas, Michael, um, um, and it's Bhagavan's only prescription were dietary and to eat a sattvic diet. I tried following Ayurvedic diets for years, and it just got me more confused than anything else, because depending on the sources you look at, one book or one author will have one set of sattvic or rajasic or tamasic foods, and another one will say the opposite. So I was wondering, is there any basic sattvic foods that you could post online or that you have more knowledge of?
It is not a complicated thing. A simple plant-based nutritious diet, a diet that is suited to the body and the climate in which we're living. And obviously that is even plant-based things can be rajasic. For example, alcohol is a plant-based product, but it is not sattvic. But we can pretty much make out which plant-based foods are either rajasic or tamasic. Just avoid those, and it's not a big deal. Just a simple vegan or vegetarian diet.
Okay.
And garlic and onions might stir you up a little bit too.
Yeah. That is, if you're very strict, a lot of very orthodox Brahmins or a lot of Vaishnavas, they are very, very strict now to avoid garlic and onion. But Bhagavan used to cook with garlic and onion, so because everything Bhagavan says there, he doesn't just say sattvic ahara, he says mita sattvic ahara. Mita means moderate. That it means moderate both in quality and quantity. Yeah. So Bhagavan never advocated going to extremes on these things. Bhagavan used to tease his mother because she was a very orthodox Brahmin. He used to tease her if she ate something. There was onion in that. Oh, now no chance of moksha for you. Moksha's all has gone now. He used to tease her, but just to make her give it out of compassion, he was doing that to help her to free her mind from all the attachment to all these rigid do's and don'ts. So we have to be sensible and moderate about it. So if you want, some people prefer to be free of to avoid onions and garlic. If so, that's fine. I mean, there's no problem with that. But generally, Bhagavan didn't advocate being too rigid about these things. But he was very particular about vegetarian diet, not any meat or eggs or fish or anything. That is one of the main things is ahimsa, the principle of ahimsa, not causing harm.
Very good. Next question. It's a two-part question. Do you want me, because the first part's rather lengthy, do you want me to wait till I read the second question after you answer the first one?
No, I think it's probably better one by one.
Okay, so we'll do the first part first. This is from Anonymous. Michael, did the sadhus you knew ever comment on a sense of a nearly constant detachment while going about their ordinary life, witnessing everything, including themselves, as if from the outside? This witnessing is not the mind watching the person and environment and creating a mental narrative that is, oh, here I am doing X, Y, or Z today. It's not what I believe you call transitive awareness of ourself as an object. Instead, this person goes on to say, it is a deep sense that the person we've been told about all of our lives doesn't really exist. It is just a kind of object going through life through which actions occur. For those wanting to realize the self, Michael, is this type of witnessing and sense of not really being this person a positive thing? Everybody around us acts as though they are really that person, while it seems that we are all just actors. Is this sense of being very detached from an identity something the sadhus have commented on, Michael?
Detachment is certainly necessary, but Bhagavan has defined detachment in nana. He says, anyate nada dirtal vairagyam aladu nirase. Vairagya means freedom from passion. Nirase means the opposite of asa is desire, nirasa is freedom from desire. So vairagya and nirasa both mean approximately the same. But Bhagavan emphasized there, not attending to what is other. So not, if we want to detach ourselves from everything, we shouldn't be witnessing it. We should be witnessing only ourselves. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby detach ourselves from the person we seem to be. So yes, in the course of, if we are following this path of self-investigation and self-surrender that Bhagavan has taught us, we do experience a type of detachment. Of course, it's only a relative detachment. We haven't yet given up this identification. That's the final thing. Only when ego is destroyed will the identification completely cease. But until then, in order to detach ourselves from other things, we need to attend to ourselves. If we are just being, people talk about being a detached witness or a detached observer. Bhagavan has made, Sadhu Om expressed it very clearly in Path of Sri Ramana, but this is something, obviously, this comes from Bhagavan. Sadhu Om said, attention itself is attachment. How do we attach, when Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunaptu, grasping form, it comes into existence. The word he uses for grasping is a word that also means attaching. So grasping or attaching ourselves to form, we come into existence as ego. Grasping form, we stand. Grasping and feeding on forms, we flourish abundantly. So grasping is the very nature of ego, and how ego grasps things other than itself, by attending to them. So if we want to get detachment from this person we seem to be and from the environment and everything, the way is not to is to attend to ourselves, not to be a witness. Of course, there is a type of practice people do, trying to be a detached witness, but that may have some therapeutic benefit. It may be of some limited benefit, but that's not going to bring about deep inner detachment. But real detachment comes only by attaching ourselves to what is real, namely to ourself. Because so long as we allow the attention to go outwards, it's attaching itself to this and that. So real detachment cannot come from anything other than self-attentiveness. That's why Bhagavan clearly said in Nana, not attending to anything other than oneself is vairagya or nirasa.
Can self-attentiveness happen throughout the day in short spurts?
If we are attending to ourselves, that is, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, the byproduct of the practice of self-attentiveness is even when our attention comes out, to the extent we've gone deep in this practice, we'll be less affected by the world around us. Yes, our attention is constantly coming out, but the more we withdraw within, the less we will be affected by things, even when we come out. So this self-investigation and self-surrender is a process of detachment. But that detachment is achieved to the extent to which we look within.
I'm talking about the value of doing it several times a day when you've got a 5-minute increment here, 15-minute increment there.
Doing what? Being self-attentive?
Yes.
Yeah, we need to be self-attentive as much as possible.
Even those short bursts of time are beneficial.
Yeah, Bhagavan said no effort to be self-attentive goes in vain. Bhagavan said even a small effort to be self-attentive is of greater value than any amount of effort in any other spiritual practice.
Very encouraging.
So every moment of self-attentiveness is a step in the right direction. So we should treasure it. People say, oh, when I try to be self-attentive, I'm only able to hold on for a moment or two and then my attention gets dragged out. Doesn't matter. If you're able to hold on to it for a moment or two, that every moment of self-attentiveness is a great achievement and is a big step in the right direction. So we should be trying to do this throughout the day. Of course, we won't be, most of the time we'll be failing, but in the midst of all those failures, there'll be small moments where we're at least to some extent attending to ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that is, every moment of self-attentiveness is something so valuable.
I think many of us are glad you said it just the way you did, because we can all come up with a couple of minutes here or there.
Yeah. Well, even a couple of minutes is quite an achievement. If you can come up with a couple of seconds here and there, that's sufficient. I mean, we can only begin from where we stand. So we have been allowing our attention to flow outwards ceaselessly throughout the waking and dream state for countless lives. So every moment in which we redirect our attention back towards ourselves is a great achievement and is so precious.
I'm glad you underscored that the number of times you did.
Yeah, and can I just say one more thing about the wording of this question? He says, it's not what I believe you call transitive awareness of ourself as an object. We cannot be aware of ourself as an object. That is, objects are things other than ourself. What we actually are is the reality of the subject. So I never talked about awareness of ourself as an object. That is, we mistake ourselves to be an object, namely this body. What transitive awareness means, awareness of objects or phenomena, awareness of things other than ourselves. Intransitive awareness is awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself. That intransitive awareness is our real nature. Transitive awareness is the nature of ego. So as ego, we are aware of ourselves as this body, but that we mistake ourselves to be a body, but that is not what we actually are. So when we are attending to ourselves, we are not attending to ourselves as an object. That has no meaning at all. Any object is something other than ourselves. This body that we mistake to be ourselves is an object, so it's something other than ourselves. We are we can start by saying we are the subject, but actually we're not even the subject. We are the reality of the subject. So we need to turn our attention back towards ourselves.
Over and over again. Thank you.
The salvation lies not in objects, but in the subject. Not that the subject itself is salvation. The salvation is the reality of the subject, which is the pure awareness I am. The subject is ego, the adjunct conflated awareness I am this body. So, but in that ego, in that adjunct conflated awareness, there is the real awareness I am. That is what we need to hold on to. And by holding on to that, we detach ourselves from everything else.
Wonderful. Should I ask the second question?
Yes.
It's brief. Shankara's 6 stanzas on nirvana includes the refrain, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. Is turning to the phrase Shivoham and feeling Shivoham the same as self-inquiry, Michael? Could feeling this lead to the sense of detachment in the earlier question?
The phrase Shivoham means I am Shiva. We are not to turn towards the words I am Shiva. What do the words I am Shiva point towards? They mean there's no Shiva other than I. Chidananda, that is what it says, it's Chidananda Rupa. Chidananda means the bliss of awareness. The chit implies the pure awareness. So Shiva, what Shiva actually is, the Swarupa, the reality, I mean, what Shiva is nothing but that happiness of pure awareness. And that is what we actually are. So how to experience that? Merely by thinking Chidananda Rupam Shivoham. We're not going to achieve, we're not going to be able to experience ourselves as we actually are merely by thinking that. But if we understand what that is pointing at, how to experience that Chidananda Rupa Shiva who is the Chidananda Rupa, only by attending to Aham. So if we understand Shiva is Aham, Shiva is I, what should we attend to? We should attend only to I. Because there's no Shiva other than I. There's no Chidananda Rupa other than I. So self-investigation is attending only to I, not attending to the thought, I am Shiva, I am Brahman. As Bhagavan said, that may be an aid. It's pointing us in the right direction, but that is not the vichara. Vichara is attending only to I. Not to the word I, but to what the word I refers, namely to ourself. And only by that self-attentiveness will a real detachment be achieved. I hope that's a clear answer to those two questions. I don't know whether the anonymous questioner is here or not, but if they have any further questions.
Right. I know that person's name, but I don't see it here. Yeah.
I will reveal myself as the anonymous person. What I was asking in the first question that wasn't quite included is whether the sense of detachment, it's not really aiming for a sense of detachment, but if that abiding sense of attachment is actually part of this path. It's a sense of feeling unreal about oneself. It's at the bottom of the question.
Yes, it is a product. It's a result of the practice. That is, the more we attend to ourselves, the more we thereby detach ourselves from everything else. So definitely, if we are following this path, there will be a very subtle detaching of ourselves from everything else. But in order to detach ourselves from everything else, we need to attach ourselves only to ourselves, only to I.
But it is a certain sense of unreality about ourselves.
Yes, of course. That is, so long as our attention is constantly going outwards, this person that we seem to be and this world seem to be very, very real. But the more we turn our attention within, the more we begin to recognize the dreamlike quality of this person and the world that it experiences.
Starts to fade away.
This person, the world that we experience through this person. Because it's not the person who's experiencing the world, it is we as ego who are experiencing the world, but we experience the world because we identify ourselves as this person. But the more we turn within, the more we thereby detach ourselves.
Thank you, Esther.
I referred to what Bhagavan said in Nana about this. That's in the 11th paragraph of Nana. Bhagavan says, not attending to what is other is vairagya or nirasa, it's desirelessness or detachment. not leaving oneself is jnana. In truth, these two are the same, are one. So the main point is we need to hold on to ourselves, not let go of ourselves. So long as we don't let go of ourselves, that itself is detachment from everything else. So as I said, we have to attach ourselves to ourselves in order to detach ourselves from everything else. Because as ego, our very nature is the very nature of ego is grasping. It'll always be grasping something. So if we want to give up grasping other things, we need to grasp ourselves. And all those other things will drop off to the extent to which we grasp ourselves, because this body and world are not holding on to us. We are holding on to them and complaining that we're bound by them. But the bondage is our own grasping. So if we want to free ourselves from this bondage, we need to grasp what alone is real, namely ourself. That is why Shankara sings, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. He's pointing us back to where does this Chidananda, this infinite happiness of pure awareness, where does it lie? It lies in ourselves. We are that. So we need to hold on to ourselves.
The world does seem to fade away. I think of it sometimes as it reveals itself more like a movie than I ever thought it to be before. I mean, you see a clear-cut difference between who you think you are and who you are on the path to understanding who you truly are.
But unfortunately, it's a horror movie. So, and wise people don't go and watch horror movies and lose their peace of mind. So if we look at the world, the state it's in now, well, it's always been in a terrible state in one way or another, but it is a horror movie. So let's turn within and not look at this horror movie.
But there is gratitude there, realizing that it is, after all, just a movie.
Yes. But the trouble is, when we watch a movie, we get emotionally involved in the movie.
Yeah.
Why do people, if you were watching a movie just as a movie, it wouldn't have any impact. If you were just thinking, oh, this is all just light and mirrors, and I mean, it's all just a fabrication, it will lose its appeal. It has its appeal because it's seemingly real.
Yeah. Very good.
I just want to ask one quick clarification. I think, the point I'm talking about is not so much that the world seems unreal, but it's a sense of balancing a feeling of unreality about oneself and still going through the world in a fairly healthy way without, what Western psychologists call depersonalization or, disassociation. So the question I'm trying to ask really was, is there any guidance as we're on this path, as we feel our individual self becoming less and less real, and how we navigate our way through the world? And I don't need an answer for it today.
Okay. Why does our individual self, why does this person that we seem to be, why does this seem to be real? Because what is actually real is only ourself, only the pure awareness I am. That alone is what is actually real. As Shankara implies that, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So what is real is only that I. Because we identify this I with a person, this person seems to be real. And because this person is a part of the whole world seems to be real. So to the extent to which we detach ourselves by turning within and holding on to ourselves, we the person we seem to be, and hence the whole world seems to, it loses its seeming reality. But as a person in this world, obviously we have to act in this world as if it's all real. But the person, who is the one who's acting in the world? It's the person who is part of the world. So the detachment has to take place one step back. We're not trying to detach this person from the world. we're trying to detach ourselves from this person and thereby from the world.
So
Is that clear? Esther, is that clear what I'm trying to say?
More or less. I need to think about it.
Yeah.
okay. So Michael, we have about 20 minutes left and the choice is yours. Well, first of all, let me just cast out there because I try to get the people's questions live while we're here. Does anybody have a question? I hope by now they would be well trained to simply put their hands up and I would call about them in chronological order, but nobody's got their hand up. Well, there's one right there, Liane. We'll go to Liane and see if somebody else, if you have a question, since we've got 20 minutes, don't hesitate to raise it and I'll come to you in chronological order. Yes, Liane.
Yes, hi there. Michael, thank you very much. And I would just like to ask again on this, just what we said previously. Because like yesterday I was out in a bigger gathering with seemingly more people. And I sometimes feel really weird when I'm among more people because more often you are being addressed, no? And you speak. And I always have the feeling more and more, it's not really real anymore. And so I feel also relieved when I come back home, when I'm as a body to myself. I start feeling more and more comfortable. So is this related to this dissolution of the ego?
Yes, I think it is.
That is strange in social gathering. Sorry. Yeah.
That is, as we withdraw more and more within, we will have less and less inclination to go outwards, to engage in social activities and these things. Of course, when there will be times when, I mean, we no man is an island. We are not. We are not. We are not seeking to become complete recluses, but there will be a natural inclination to withdraw more and more from external engagements. The more we are inclined to withdraw back within, we will correspondingly be drawn to withdraw from external social engagements and such things. But according to destiny, we may often find that we're in the midst of people, we're in the midst of situations where we need to engage with people. So we should then, we don't have to change our outward behavior, because the one who is involved with people is the person we seem to be. So let this person interact with people according to the circumstances, in an appropriate manner according to the circumstances. But it's the inward detachment that is really important.
Yeah. Okay, it's clear. Thank you very much.
Okay, right.
Okay. Stephen writes, I'm at a loss to understand how the I am, which we actually are, has an I, since our I has to be annihilated in order to see what we are. If I is annihilated, then how is there an I left? What is the nature of the I am, which we are? And I seems to have to be personal or finite in order to be I. Why is it not it as opposed to I? And one more paragraph here, 1.5. I recall you saying that Bhagavan said that I am that is less adequate than expression I am I. In my ignorance, these expressions seem totally opposite, one signifying abstract, universal, impersonal, and the other expressing either a vacuous law of identity that A equals A, something is itself, or even worse, an egoistic, self-proclaimed, prideful boast. I know I'm wrong, Michael, but I can't see how. In a nutshell, you can't both say that one must annihilate all sense of I and also say that our essence is I am, which brings us back to the I. Michael.
Okay, then we need to understand what Bhagavan means. For example, in the last verse of Ulujunapadu Anubandham, Bhagavan says, I'm saying this from memory, so but it's more or less correct. I shall declare, I shall truly say, or tell the essence of the final conclusion of all of Vedanta, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sarate, the essence of the final conclusion of all of Vedanta. If I dying, I become that I, which is the nature of awareness, alone will remain. So there, what does Bhagavan mean by saying, if I dying, I become that, or I am that? That I, which is the nature of awareness, alone remains. To understand this, we need to understand I is the pronoun I refers to ourself. We ourself for what is real. So I alone is what is real. So the pure I is what we actually are. And the nature of that pure I is Satchit, pure being awareness. But that I is mixed with adjuncts as I am this or I am that, I am this person. That adjunct conflated awareness, I am this person, I am this body, that is ego. That is what needs to die. When that dies, what remains is the reality of ego, which is the pure I, or pure I am. When we say I am, what does it mean? It means I exist. So the I am refers to our existence or being, whereas I am this or I am that, I am this body or whatever, that is an identity. So our real identity is we are not identical to anything other than ourselves. When Bhagavan says, I am I, what he implies thereby is that I am nothing other than myself. It may sound like a tautology or a vacuous law of identity, but the reason Bhagavan uses those words is now we experience ourselves as I am this body. That is a false identification because we're identifying ourselves with something other than ourselves. So I am I is the recognition, but what we actually are is only I and nothing other than I. The words I am that, in which that refers to Brahman, are also pointing at the same thing, but it's pointing at it in a roundabout way. Because when we talk about Brahman, we have a certain idea about Brahman. Brahman is the infinite reality, whatever. In order to experience Brahman, since Brahman is I, in order to experience Brahman, we need to experience I as it actually is. When we experience ourselves as we actually are, we recognize that we are nothing other than I. In other words, we're nothing other than ourselves. Another, Bhagavan expressed it in several ways. One way is nan. That means I am I. He also expressed it as tane. Oneself alone is oneself. So we are nothing other than ourselves. We are when we allow our attention to go outwards, we allow our attention to go outward by identifying ourselves with a set of adjuncts, namely this body consisting of 5 sheaves. That adjunct conflated I is ego. That is the I that needs to die. When that dies, what happens is the adjuncts drop off and the pure I alone remains. So he says, an I seems to be personal or finite. It is personal or finite only because of a false identification. I am this body. But the pure I is infinite and transpersonal. I mean, you can't say it's either impersonal or personal, beyond the distinction between personal and impersonal. It is the one infinite reality. that pure awareness I am. The awareness I am means the awareness of our own being. Such it. That alone is what is real. So it's only, what is unreal is the adjunct conflated I. But even in that adjunct conflated I, there's an element of reality, which is the pure I. Stephen, was that a clear answer to your question?
Hello, Stephen. Your mic's not working for some reason, although you did unmute yourself. We're going to have to assume it was a good answer. I thought it was great. Okay, Michael, we do have Suresh standing in the wings.
Yeah.
Suresh, we have about 7 or 8 minutes. Can you make it quick? Go
Sure.
ahead.
Michael, thank you for your inspiration again. And I have a translation question. So non is I, translated as I.
No, it's mistranslated as I. It means I am I.
I am I.
If you say nanit deham, what does that mean? I hyphen this body? No, it means I am this body. Nana means
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
I who? I hyphen who? No, it means who am I? I am who, or who am I?
Got it.
Am is understood there.
Yeah.
Shivoham. We were talking about Shivoham. Is it Shiva hyphen I? No, it's Shiva is I, or I am Shiva.
Then follow up. There's also non. That is what I am that I am. The translates into, I guess it's I am that I am. There's another one, thane thon.
Yes.
That means it is what it is.
Yeah. Tane tattavamidane tane kartavaya arunachala. Oneself alone is oneself. That alone is the reality. Reveal this to me yourself, Arunachala.
Beautiful.
Okay,
Thank
Suresh.
you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
In that verse, tane tattavamidane, we can take it in two senses. Tane can be a repetition just for emphasis. Oneself alone is the reality. Or we can take it as tane tan. Oneself is oneself. That is the reality. But they amount to the same, but it's two ways we can interpret the verse. But the essential meaning is the same. But oneself alone is the reality. And who is oneself? Oneself is only oneself, nothing other than oneself.
Very good. By the way, Stephen wrote a comment in the chat box. I don't know if his mic's working or not. Stephen, I can read it, or if you can, if we can hear you, go ahead and take it away. Okay, he says he's here listening, and his comment, Michael, is if I is impersonal, I don't see how it can say I in any sense. What does the I refer to? He says, I am here. What is the pure I? It remains obscure to him.
The ego is an adjunct conflated awareness. I am this body. But in that adjunct conflated awareness, there's the essential, the reality of that is the pure awareness I am. We are always, whether we are aware of ourselves as this body or not, we are always aware I am. We cannot be aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am Stephen, I am Michael, I am Ted, or I am whoever, without being aware I am. So that I am is the basic reality. As Bhagavan says, it's the screen on which the pictures are all projected. So that is the basic reality. And there is never a moment when we are not aware of our own being. We're always aware I am.
Okay.
That is what is real. What is unreal is the identification, I am this body. It's a false identification. The only real identification is I am I. I'm nothing other than I, because I alone is real. That is the implication of Tattvamasi, you are that. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. I am Atma Brahman. This I is this self is Brahman.
Okay.
So
And
what
the
I actually is the infinite reality. It appears to be finite, it appears to be personal because of this false identification. I am this person. I am Stephen, I am Michael, I am Ted, I'm whoever.
Mhm.
I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I think it is to me. In the 4 minutes we have left, I have one question from an hour ago. It's pretty quick and it might not require much of a lengthy answer. You were saying at the time, about an hour ago, that we are turning in the right direction with our practice when we look towards ourself. You said that several times, as we actually are directed. Then you said, if we are practicing this as directed, that then we have absolutely no doubts. You said we have no doubts that we're doing this correctly. So my question is, what are some of the indications? This might sound trivial, but I don't think it is for some of us. What are some of the indications, Michael, that we are doing this correctly? And I say this because I have something going on. I think most of us probably feel we have something going on practicing Atma-vichara. But sometimes I'm not quite convinced that it's not my mind projecting a suggestion that might not be real.
Any indication is something other than I. So there can be no indication, but we all know, we all clearly know I am. We all clearly know our own being. We're attending just to ourselves. We're not attending to anything that appears or disappears. We're attending to that which is permanent. In our experience, what is permanent? Everything other than ourselves appears and disappears. We ourselves alone are the one constant throughout the waking state, throughout the dream state, throughout the sleep state. The one thing that we are eternally aware of is I am. In other words, we're aware of our own being. And we're aware of our being just by being our being. It's not like being aware of something else. It's not a transitive awareness, it's a pure intransitive awareness.
Mm-hmm. And you would recognize it if you experience it.
Who is not experiencing it? It's the basis of all experience. It's the ground of experience.
It's
In Sanskrit,
true.
they've got words, adhara, adhisthana,
Yeah.
or as Bhagavan put it, a screen. It's the basis.
But for many of us, that's covered over by this layer of fog, this layer of Maya.
It is covered but not concealed. That is, even when now you're aware of yourself as I am Ted.
Yes.
But being aware of yourself as I am Ted entails being aware of yourself as I am. You couldn't be aware of yourself as I am Ted if you were not first aware of yourself as I am.
That makes sense.
That's why that is this practice. It's a very simple practice, but it's deep and subtle. So we need to have a subtle understanding. That's why reading Bhagavan very carefully and thinking about it, making sense of what he's saying, is very essential, because then it'll be very clear to us what actually this what Bhagavan means when he talks about being self-attentive, fixing our mind on ourself. Once we understand it and try to put it into practice, it becomes, as we go deeper and deeper in this practice, it becomes clearer and clearer. But what also becomes clearer and clearer is how little love we have to attend to that, and how much enthusiasm we have to jump outwards and attend to other things. That's why this practice is necessary. More and more and more, we need to be turning this outward running mind back within and fixing it in ourselves.
And I find I can clearly don't have enough practice. The more I go, the more I feel that feeling that I still don't have enough practice.
Yes.
uh,
We, the deeper we go in this practice, the more we will feel the inadequacy of our practice until we lose ourselves completely. Our practice is adequate only when we cease to exist. We as ego cease to exist. And then we remain as we actually are. That is, I dying, I alone remaining.
Yeah. Or as somebody says when a friend of ours died, that happened.
Yeah.
It's not the end, it's the beginning of something
Yeah.
else.
What Bhagavan often used to say when report of someone had passed away, he said, they have subsided.
They've subsided. Amen to that. 2 hours have gone by in a minute, again, as always. Michael, thank you. You've heard people express it here, so I won't belabor the point. And you're correct in saying it's all Ramana. And we should all think that ourselves about our own discoveries and writings and guidance.
Who is Ramana? Ramana is I.
It's you, it's self.
What is shining in our heart is that is why Bhagavan took on that external form, is to tell us that God or the God or Guru we're looking for is there shining in our own heart as our own being. I am.
Yeah. It makes me smile when I hear you say that. Michael, thank you. Great job today. I think everybody else is feeling the same as I do, or they wouldn't be here for 2 hours on a Sunday when they might be doing something else. And I can see their appreciation showing up on screen right now. We're up to April 4th when we see you next. This year again is whizzing by, but that's fine. April 4th. Have a great month, Michael. God bless you and your work as always, and we'll see you in a month.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.